So I'll just go through some introductions. So hello, everyone, and welcome to eCampusOntario's webinar on adaptive learning and case simulations, AI for personalized learning. My name is Don Eldridge, and I'm a digital learning associate on the programs and services team at eCampusOntario, where I work primarily on the adaptive learning portfolio. It gives me great pleasure to be moderating today's webinar and to introduce our main presenters. Joining us today is Dr. Ron Babin, who is a professor in the Ted Rogers School of IT Management. Dr. Babin joined Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU, in 2006 following a 30-year professional career in management consulting. Prior to joining TMU, Dr. Babin was a strategy partner at Accenture and KPMG in Toronto. His research is focused on digital transformation, social responsibility, and global outsourcing of IT and business processes. He examines the social and environmental impacts of global IT outsourcing and has published several books, journal articles, and conference papers on this topic. His research on the topic began with his doctoral studies and thesis at University of Manchester. Within the industry, he maintains his knowledge currency through teaching executive education on topics such as digital disruption, cybersecurity ethics, and outsourcing. Dr. Babin is an adjunct researcher with the International Data Corporation, IDC, IT Executive Program, where he conducts research, advises IDC global clients, and writes about vendor and sourcing management strategies. Dr. Babin also writes teaching cases that are published in conference proceedings and in academic publications, such as the Journal of IT Teaching Cases and Harvard Business Review Case Studies. At TMU, Dr. Babin is an engaged community member. He is a past member of the TMU Senate and is past president of the TMU Faculty Association. At TMU, he has coached students and coordinated many student case competitions, including the case competition, the JDC competition, the Queen's University ICBC competition, and the Simon Fraser University case competition. Also joining us today is Cathy Pillar, who is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Ametros Learning, a Toronto-based education technology company that helps students and professionals transition knowledge into practical skills through AI-powered, practice-based learning that replicates real-life workplace. Cathy is a passionate market builder, skilled in strategic planning and marketing with extensive experience in brand building, marketing communications, product segment, and channel marketing. Prior to co-founding Ametros, Cathy 30 years in the technology industry, including 11 years with BlackBerry, where she held the position of Senior Vice President, Global Channel Marketing. In this role, she was responsible for launching dozens of products and services in hundreds of countries, greatly contributing to the exponential international growth of the organization. Cathy is an avid speaker, coach, and mentor, supporting colleagues, clients, and partners with her extensive experience and insight. Cathy holds an HBA in economics from Wilfrid Laurier University and an MBA from the Rotman School of Management. Welcome, Ron and Cathy.
Thank you.
I'd like to begin by honoring and acknowledging the offices of eCampusOntario are located on the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. I recognize and am grateful for the legacy of all past, present, and future generations of the First Peoples of this land. I join you today from Fort Frances, Ontario, which is situated in the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Métis people, where it is my great privilege to live, work, and learn. In this virtual space, we're all convening from different places. This is one of the things that makes the online environment special. I invite you to share your own land acknowledgement in the chat. eCampusOntario is committed to supporting Indigenous pedagogies and amplifying Indigenous knowledge in digital learning environments. As such, we are answering the call to action and performing a review of the 6 Extend modules to identify ways in which Indigenous ways of knowing and pedagogies can be respectfully and accurately incorporated throughout the program. We are seeking input from a variety of Indigenous perspectives and educators with Indigenous knowledge to contribute to this initiative between October 25th and November 29th. Contributors will receive a one-time lump sum honorarium to be distributed upon the project completion. Please visit the link that's being posted in our chat right now, or email Alyssa Bigelow, an email being provided in the chat, for more information about this exciting endeavor. So turning to our main presentation today, I'm just going to provide a little bit of context as to what leads us here today. Adaptive learning platforms are educational technologies that assess the learner's knowledge, identify skills gaps, and provide a personalized instructional path towards learning outcomes. Overlapping with adaptive learning are other technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and intelligent tutoring systems. Often experiential in nature, these technologies are grounded in competency-based the learner towards mastery through ongoing practice and immediate feedback. Among the many benefits of adaptive learning, these technologies have been shown to improve learning efficiency, knowledge transfer, and learner engagement. eCampusOntario has been working in the adaptive learning space for the past several years, where we see these technologies as an important and emerging part of the digital transformation of higher education. You can see details about our work by visiting our adaptive learning webpage at the link being posted into the chat. For the remainder of today's webinar, we will hear about a collaboration between Toronto Metropolitan University and Ametros Learning. This project, which benefited in part from the province of Ontario's historic $70 million investment in the virtual learning strategy, saw the creation of new, relevant, and current case simulations for IT management courses delivered on the Ametros Experiential Learning Platform. At this point, we will turn the presentation over to Ron and Cathy to share some details about the project and the innovative technology behind it. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will turn it over to Ron and Cathy.
Awesome. Thank you. It's Cathy. I'm going to kick things off here. So let me just get my technology in order and share my screen. Get everything started. All righty. Thank you so much, Dawn, and to all of our other friends at eCampus. Thank you so much for hosting this today. And thank you, all of you who are joining today. We're really excited by the response to this event and appreciate your time and are grateful for you all being here. I'm going to kick things off and give you a quick introduction to Ametros Learning, just who we are, what we do, how it works. And that'll take about 4 minutes. And then I'm going to hand it over to Ron, who's going to walk you through our very exciting collaborative project that we've been working on for a couple of years together. So about Ametros, what do we do? So we're a learning technology company, and we provide a platform that allows for communication-based virtual experiential learning and assessment. Our vision as an organization is to transform the way we teach and learn by providing an equitable, measurable, and supportive environment that helps learners transition knowledge into practical skills. In September of 2021, we launched our 3rd generation of experiential learning platform that we refer to as Ametros 3. This platform incorporated flexible, state-of-the-art design principles that improved user experience and flow, drove deeper learner engagement, provided enhanced and more accurate assessment, and empowered instructors like Ron with a flexible, scalable online teaching tool. On this platform, we develop products, and we design and develop custom and ready-to-run experience-based learning modules for both the academic and corporate learning markets. Our modules support the development of essential skills like communication, critical thinking, problem solving, leadership, and emotional intelligence. Here's how it works. In each experiential learning module, learners take on a role and assignment within a fictitious company. To complete their assignment, they're required to interact via simulated email or instant messaging with AI-powered clients, coworkers, supervisors, and other characters. Each interaction with an AI-powered character is designed to measure the learner's ability to demonstrate knowledge and skills. Depending on how successfully the learner communicates and demonstrates the required skills, the character replies with different responses tones, and attitudes, providing learners with feedback that mirrors real-life experience. The platform also assesses competency and delivers real-time, individualized feedback and adaptive content. Through authentic interactions, feedback, and iterations, learners gain concrete experience in a carefully designed narrative that works towards the resolution of a problem or project. To date, Ametros has designed and developed more than 200 experiential learning modules for approximately 47,000 learners. Some of our Ontario-based clients include, and are featured here on the screen, Toronto Metropolitan University, Carleton University, University of Waterloo, Brock University, Mohawk College, Algonquin College, Conestoga. I forgot to mention Fanshawe, it should be on this slide, Pearson Canada, and Havergal College. So with that little bit about Ametros, I'm happy to now turn the reins over to Ron, and I don't know why it's not clicking, and let Ron kick things off.
Hi, thanks, Cathy. So first, I'm Ron, and I said with my colleagues earlier, this is much like teaching that we've done over the last 2 years, where we've got 50 or 60 boxes on the screen, most of whom are quiet. So I feel like I'm back to the future here, but I'll preview this presentation by saying if you've got questions, just put them in the chat. I'm reading it as we go along, and thanks to everybody who introduced themselves. I see, there are some people like myself who are in the classroom or certainly at a college or a university. So I'm at TMU. We were once called Ryerson University. Today we're TMU. And I began experimenting with the Ametros platform about 2 years ago. It was the academic year 2020, and then we repeated it in 2021, and now we are full bore. So I teach an introduction to information technology. It's called ITM 100. And by the way, we also worked with Humber College on developing some of these modules. We have an affinity because we use the same textbook and in a very similar course. So I've presented some of this material previously. There's a lot of detail. I've got about 20 minutes because I want to respond to questions. And if you are teaching or considering teaching using Ametros or something like Ametros, I can tell you quite a bit from my last 2 years of experience and also looking into it a little bit. So here's the agenda. And if we can move to the next slide. I've been, sort of entranced by the potential for using artificial intelligence in the classroom. Our course ITM 100, and I'm one of the instructors. Right now, there are 3 of us that are teaching four of us, sorry, that are teaching about 700 students, and that includes students at the Chang School, which is part-time and evening studies. The biggest challenge we face was that our students are generally about 18 years of age, and the most business experience they might have is perhaps part-time job at Tim Hortons or Canadian Tire. They really don't have a feel for what it's like to be in a business environment. And as Cathy has identified, there are a lot of, we sometimes call them soft skills, but they're very important. They're critical skills such as communication, understanding how business works, teamwork, ability to probe and ask questions politely. So I looked at Ametros even back in the fall of 2015, and Ametros was conceived, so to speak, at our university, and it uses, if you don't know this, the IBM Watson natural language understanding as the engine to do the interpretation. The nice thing about this product and this implementation is that and I'll say this several times, that it develops an understanding based on its past experience. So every semester, the students are getting a different version of the case because the AI engine, Watson again, is smarter. It learns from the interactions of the previous students that have gone through this. And as we're in the midst of this right now, I've got about 80 or so case evaluations that I'm working through right now where the students have had their first go. I'll come back to that. It's about supply chain management at a hospital. But the the students are introduced to different characters, as Cathy suggested. Some of them are nice, some of them are not so nice. And this is the reality of business. So that in the case we're working through right now, the CIO is very friendly, very technical, because that's perhaps what a CIO does. But the chief medical officer knows nothing about technology and is very concerned about, getting the hospital operating again, which is being impacted due to lack of supplies. So the students have to navigate a real life. And in our case right now, or in our situation, we have actual 4 simulations that allow the students to develop these important soft skills. So Cathy, if you could go to the next one, please. And again, I'll look for questions in the chat. That's the easiest way. Yes, and the bottom line here is important. What we try and what I've seen, in fact, is that some students have said, wow, this is very realistic. They know it's AI, but it simulates a business environment and gives them that skill that allows them to practice without fear of failing. They can make mistakes, they can use improper language or protocol, and they'll be chastised. Maybe their mark won't be great, but they won't lose their job. And that's perhaps the most important thing in these simulations. It's fail-safe. The students are not damaged or careers are not ended because of it, but they learn from their experience. And of course, it's part of their grade in the course. Next slide, please. And Cathy's driving the slides. Yeah, they can participate in a realistic business case. Now, the cases are directly tied to the course material, and I'll mention supply chain management, e-commerce, customer relationship management, and then cybersecurity. 2 of them are in a retail grocery store. 1 is in a hospital setting, and then the last one is in a healthcare fitness institute. The other nice thing is that students can do this, and we were quite motivated during the pandemic. Students need to learn at their own pace, at their own time. And in some cases, on their own. Some cases they're sitting with others, but I'm not too upset about that because we've got some techniques to capture and prevent plagiarism. And again, each student gets a different reaction from the machine depending on what their dialogue with the character. And then again, every semester is different than the last semester. And this diminishes the opportunity for plagiarism and cheating, which was a huge concern during the fully online, pandemic education. Next slide, please. Further, I've been looking at artificial intelligence from many perspectives, and I try to focus on how different digital technologies will disrupt various industries. And AI in education is certainly one of them. I believe, and EDUCAUSE has supported this, that it can help us in some of our current challenges. And we have a very different audience today, perhaps, than we did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're digitally adaptive. They expect that they will be both entranced, entertained a little bit, but in interacting with the technology on their phone, on the GO train, on the subway, or in their basement. So I think I'm looking at this, and we're looking at this as the opportunity to rethink the curriculum. Now, I'm very careful here because one of the themes that comes through is, and this is a fellow by the name of Clayton Christensen at Harvard said, the university is going to, it's obsolete. They're not going to exist because it'll be overtaken by digital technologies. It'll be disrupted. And I don't think that's the case. The evidence has not proven that. So far, at least. But I do believe that artificial intelligence, number one, our audience or the students in many respects expect that, and I think it can help us. It can augment our teaching capabilities and bring more reality into the classroom or into the learning experience. And the role of the educator changes, but it doesn't go away. And there's a bit of a challenge as well. Certainly, I'm seeing some of this where we have traditional educators. They've always done it this way. We use the textbook, we use the cases from the textbook. It takes a little bit. It's different work. I don't know if it's more or less yet, but it's different to engage the AI engine to do some of that work for us. So to the next one. Jordan's got a question. That's for Cathy, so I'll let her do that. Yeah, this is from the EDUCAUSE report, but it said, the AI relevance for teaching and learning, one of the biggest issues is cost, and I'll come back to that. But take a look at risk and the impact on learning outcomes. Sorry, the risk of it not working is huge, or us, the educator being responsible for making sure this technology on a different platform that's out on the cloud using an IBM Watson sort of thing. It's way beyond our ability to definitively structure it and turn the dials and make sure that it's operational. We rely on Ametros for that, and perhaps IBM. But I must say, we're now into our third year of using this, I've had very little. I mean, there are little glitches every now and then, resetting passwords and other problems. I'll come to that, Ian, thanks. But we have to be prepared to experiment, and it doesn't always work the way it's supposed to work, just like Zoom in the early days. And then the cost. There is a cost to running Ametros. The first 2 years we funded it out of our funds and with support from eCampus. I have to acknowledge that. But now the students are asked to pay as they go. So they pay just as if they were downloading a case from Ivy Business School or Harvard Business Review. It's about $12.50 per case. So I'll put that out there, and that's something that we've made arrangements through Ametros. So it's a contract. Now, in the last 2 weeks, I've had students that have come to me and said, "Oh, $12.50, that's I can barely afford that," and then they go off to get their chai latte double grande. But I've said, okay, well, if you can't spend that money, I understand. I have to make sure that they have an alternate form of responding to the case, which becomes a written case. And again, I'm happy to share that with anybody who wants to talk further about this. So I say, okay, you do the written one, your colleagues are doing the interactive one. And I say to the students, you learn from going through the simulation, but here is the written case if you want to go that way. To answer to Ian, it's 20%. It's 20% of their final grade, in addition to the exams and other case studies. And we'll come to this in a second, but we still have, I think it's 5 traditional, out of the book case studies that we're using for discussion in class. And to Edmund, I would say, I think we need to evolve the curriculum. So it's not a step change function, everything's going AI, although we did go everything virtual. I think it's a gradual acceptance and adoption of technologies like Ametros that are going to help us along. So, and I think to ignore this type of technology is a mistake, because we'll see it in our banking, we'll see it in our online purchases at retailers that we know and new retailers. So hang on, Julie, I got to go to the next slide. The next slide, please, Catherine. Yeah, okay, these are some of the points. It's open to Pandora's box, but whether we open it or it's open for us, I really don't think we have a choice. But I think we need to remain relevant. And I don't know enough, Cathy might be able to talk to this, but working with companies like Pearson and others, there's a recognition that the paper and the textbook, it's good, we've had it for a long time, but much more is needed. Again, students expect it, and they engage with it. Okay, to the next slide. Yeah, and Julie, that's an excellent question. And I don't yet, but I might. Let's talk in December. Yeah, our past practice was that we simply had, textbook cases. I think we had 7 or 8 of them. And then, of course, they came up on the final exam. I would read them, I would grade them. And importantly, we would discuss them in class. In the 2020 pilot, we had 2. Let's see. Students were given the opportunity to do it either through the simulation or through the written case for the second case. And if you go to the next slide, Cathy, I think I can say, yeah, case 2 there was less take-up. There was an interesting phenomena here. Students told me, and I think this will come out in a later slide, that they found, although it was more engaging, and this is good, Cathy, just stop there. Although it was more engaging, they found it took more time to do the case, and they could knock off, a couple of pages on a written case, especially working with their colleagues. So it was more efficient. And as we get closer to the end of term, students don't have a whole lot of time, so they go for efficiency. They're at least business students are very pragmatic. So in 2021, I made one case mandatory, the purchasing and delivery, the Marriott case number 3 there, and the second one optional. And I saw the same phenomena. There was a drop off in those that took up case 4. But I will say that those who took it up enjoyed it. They were the better students, and I could see, although I haven't done a deep dive on it to answer Julie's question, I could see that they were learning more, and I'll come back to that. Cathy, if you could go on to the next case. Or the next slide. Yeah, all 4 cases are mandatory, but they can opt out of the AI, but they will get a written version of the case that everybody will have to respond to. And again, Julie, I think you're right. I should do some analysis to see how well the simulation is compared to the written one. Next slide, please. And by the way, I'm trying to leave enough time so we can answer these questions, verbally and by turning your camera on. So I took a couple of polls, surveys after the course was completed. So how the students compared the textbook cases to the simulation. Next slide. And how the AI reacted to students. That's a joke. Certainly the case simulations were perceived as more realistic than the textbook cases because there are twists and turns. The dialogue with the characters provided more depth. 42% agreed with that. You could go back and forth between the personalities in the case. The students, 40% of them at least, enjoyed that. Next slide, or the next part of this slide, Cathy. However, again, this is the point that the textbook cases, it's a page, maybe it's page and a half, less time to read, easier to understand. So the textbook cases, they could go through quickly. The case simulation took much more time to complete compared to the textbook cases. And that's, I think, the reason that motivated some of the students, at least, to opt out on the second go round of the case. Next slide. That was 2020. Would you recommend discussion of the case in class? Overwhelming, 93% said yes. We really like talking about it, so we get a feel for it. So I'm doing that now. I set the students up and say, okay, here's the case, away you go. But before you do, let's talk about what you're going to see. How you respond, I don't know, but here are some of the issues that are going to come up in the case. And at the same time, 77% said, we recommend continuing cases from the textbook. So now we've got 5 from the book and 4 that are simulation. The textbook ones are worth a little bit less. So answering an earlier question, 10% for the textbook cases, 20% for the simulation. So a little bit of an imbalance there. And you can see some of the other, my understanding of how business operates, including how IT supports the business, is 77% said it is much better. So I'm comfortable that the simulation is helping us achieve the goals of the course, and that's to give the students an understanding of how technology operates within a business. Next slide. In November, students were under pressure. So just go through this full slide, Cathy. Just bring out the reveal here. Yeah, the probability of better marks per allocation of time. Students are very thoughtful on their time management and return on investment, so to speak. So keep going, Cathy. It shows the written case because it was easier to complete. They can do it more quickly. And a third of them, 36%, say felt their marks might be better on the written case. And I don't know that that has been, there's support for that. Again, I'll look and come back with some more information. Keep going, Cathy. Next slide. 2021, a year ago, we introduced this a grocery store, which is based on Loblaws. And there's a published case on SSRN if you're interested. I can send you the teaching notes if you're interested. It was presented at the ASAC conference in June at Dalhousie University. But again, it's not a percentage, it's simply a count. 59 students, and I'm thinking we had about 80 students in the class, said the simulation is more realistic. It helped me learn. So, but equally important, B, our discussion of the case helps me to learn from fellow students. So having the in-class discussion, I will say to you, is very, very important. And then allowing the students to use both, to participate in both forms, the written and the simulation, I think is the, at this point in time, is the best blend. That's question number F. Students generally enjoyed it, or at least they didn't feel that it was contrived, and they don't think the textbook cases are superficial. Now, an important distinction, the textbook cases are 100% real. One recent case was the city of Mississauga. We talk about how digital technology is transforming the city of Mississauga. So they can go to the website. All of the Ametros cases are based on real situations, but the names have been changed to, disguise the actual case. Next slide, Cathy. And then some quotes, selective. But most of the results, the students that responded to a survey, and this was done in January of this year, after the course is finished, marked, grades are in, the very first one, I found this module was surprisingly more of a learning experience than I had expected. So they're a little bit cynical, some of these students. I enhanced my skills, I could learn more. So many students, when I read their responses, and these are typical, Cathy, go to the next slide. They thought they learned. It was positive. The one negative response, students sometimes feel embarrassed. This is an odd thing. They're talking to, a machine, an AI machine. They know that. And they thought, well, I didn't do as well as I could have. It went fairly well, but I made a few mistakes. And my response is, that's how you learn. Maybe your score is not great, but you now know how to do this on the next simulation or the next simulation. And when you go on the co-op or the intern experience, and when you finally get a job, you'll have enough experience, some of it simulated, that you should be ready for the real world. Okay, Cathy, next slide. I think we're getting close. It's not a silver bullet. So that is back to my first question. I've still got a great career as an instructor. We all do, those of you who instruct. But I think our role shifts. Students will learn more, have a better appreciation, but at least the ones that I'm teaching, again, they're 18 years old by and large, maybe 19. They are cautious about putting a lot of time into something, unless it draws them in. So gamification, and maybe that's something else we can discuss. But they also enjoy working on their own because they can do it whenever they want. But they also enjoy bouncing ideas off of others, in the classroom and with the professor as well. They may not get that from the AI simulations. Next slide. I think it was successful. I think it helps the students, interpersonal skills, the soft skills that we've talked about. However, the next slide, we've got to talk about it in the class. So it does not negate or take away from class time. We all need to know, how are you going to be evaluated? So at the end of each module, the students are asked to do a reflection of what they believe they learned. And that's a core component for grading. And they can only get there after they've gone through the full simulation. Then I use turnitin.com to evaluate that for plagiarism. That's one thing. But it also allows them to reflect, am I better now? Do I have better do I think I've got better skills? And how does this apply to, the course that we're taking, and tie back into the material we're talking about in class? Cathy, the next slide. little bit bigger picture, and there's a great book, The AI Advantage for Business, by and large. Thomas Davenport, some of you might know him, Boston University, I think, and many other places. But he's looked at a lot of AI implementations across different sectors, and he says, you know, the moonshots fail, where we attempt to go from where we're standing right now, long way to the moon. Typically, it doesn't work. But small steps, slow approach, incremental. It's not fast, but it's how we get there. And I don't know how many flights there were before they actually landed on the moon. Cathy, the next slide. And I think that's, yeah, the moon sets. The next perspective is, don't be afraid of AI. Use Ametros. I recommend it. But introduce it cautiously, slowly, but in an ongoing basis. Be careful not to back away from it completely and say, okay, we're never going to do this again. Clayton Christensen said that, you know, disruptive innovation, I think he was wrong, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, I believe. Computer-aided instruction has not remade education the way we predicted it. There will always be a role for instructors. And I'm almost at the end now. Cathy, next slide or two. Yeah, we are not the sage on the stage, but we're guiding students, and I think we know that anyway. AI augments, but it doesn't replace our ability to draw students and engage them in a discussion. And I think we need, and I say this to my colleagues here at TMU, we need to understand more about what this can do, and there are pockets in different departments. But the human guidance will still be required, and professors are certainly going to be required, but we must anticipate that our role changes. Last slide now, I think, Cathy, is that it?
Yes.
Are we still needed? Perhaps not. We've only just begun to explore it, maybe 20 years, 50 years from now, but I think we're making a mistake if we ignore this, and that's true in all digital disruptive digital transformation. Embrace it, play with it, anticipate it, and we'll be in better shape than if we ignore it. And on that note, I think I've answered the questions. And as I always say to my students, you've been awfully quiet. So for those of you who are still awake, turn on your microphone, ask questions, or please put them into the chat. How do we handle the questions now, Dawn or Cathy?
Well, we certainly can take them directly from the chat if folks have want to post them there, or feel free to put up your hand and I can try to capture that on my screen here, and you can open your mic. It's entirely up to everyone in the audience. Definitely a quiet, as these things often are.
Look at a slightly different perspective while you're formatting your question. I have a strong background with the Faculty Association, the union. And, you know, sometimes we think, wow, this is displacing professors. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. And I think there's no resistance, at least explicit, from our Faculty Association. And I haven't heard from others either, but again, I think we need to work with this, not against it.
Okay, we do have a question popping up here. They're in a cafe, so can't talk at the moment, but let me just pull that. Could you show us an example of the working of the AI in the cases? How is the AI built on them?
Cathy.
Yeah, I'm not going to do a demo just because from a technology perspective, we didn't set that up today, but I'm happy to do that with anybody who wants to reach out to me and take you through it. And you can actually see it, and we can do a good student responding to an interaction and a challenged student and show you how it works and how the assessment works off of it. It's better to do in a one-on-one. And we have quite a library of products that we can pull from. So please reach out. But I'll explain a little bit technically how we're using the AI and how that works. So we're an applied AI shop, meaning our platform actually sits on an AI backbone. Ron mentioned that we currently work with IBM Watson NLU. And essentially what happens is in the student work, their input to the platform comes in as unstructured data, and it's run through IBM Watson Natural Language, and that platform analyzes it, and it sends to our platform information about the student work. Specifically, it identifies in the text that they've input concepts and keywords and intentions, entities, emotions, sentiment, parts of speech. And we refer to these as items of assessment. And on our platform, we create response and assessment formulas at an interaction level that utilize these items of assessment, and the formulas are applied to the student's work. So character responses and competency assessments are driven based on the competency of the student work. So there's, and skills are often, or the knowledge that we're looking for, are stacked in an interaction. So we may be looking for them to demonstrate knowledge on 2 topics and, you know, 3 different skills: persuasion, empathy, and rapport building, or something like that. And you know, so it's quite a bit of calculation that's going on, looking at that response, figuring out how to respond at, you know, various elements of that interaction. And then within that, behind that is the competency assessment, which, you know, drives sort of the performance at a skill level. And then we can serve up adaptive stuff. So it's pretty cool the way we're doing it. And we're working on some brand new technology using some open AI platforms. That's really, really cool, but that's a sense of how it works.
So Cathy, Lucas Johnson has had his hand up, and I think it would be good to have a live question, but also, Cathy, you should take a look at Thomas's question, and I'll leave that for you, and I can respond to J.R. Dingwall after Lucas. Just hang on, Lucas. And JR, there is a fascinating story there to respond. And my goodness, Jordan Holmes has posed an interesting question. Maybe that'll be our conclusion, but I turn the floor to Lucas for your question. Lucas.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Babin and Cathy, for being here. I turned my camera on because I spent 90 minutes this morning talking to 60 empty boxes too, so hello. I'm curious about, Dr. Babin, your experiences with students like wanting to gamify or break it. Like, learners want to break everything, right? Like, you give them a math manipulative and they twist it and poke it. So is there any allowance for that, I guess, is my question. Like, can they choose wrong on purpose just to see how wrong it goes? And how does that affect their assessment and the feedback cycle? Because I think part of, I'm in a faculty of education, doctoral student in education, and a tech coordinator in the faculty. Part of the learning in my mind is that, like, going wrong, being corrected, and going back. So I guess my question is, do they have opportunities to mess up? And do you think they mess up on purpose just to see how wrong they can make it go?
Oh, yes. And so do my fellow instructors. You know, they try to break it, but, you know, in a good way. I'll call it ethical hacking or ethical breaking. But Cathy used a wonderful phrase, the challenge students. But students who may not have a great command of business language, they'll say, yo, prof, or, you know, hey, you know, CIO, tell me all about your technology. And, you know, that may not go over so well. So, and I can't tell if they're doing it explicitly because they really want to see how a strongly negative or a poor or a challenge response will work. But the net result is they get a poor grade. So that immediately I can look, I can see how they have interacted. I see how Ametros has scored them. And I say, wait a minute, you either really are challenged, and that's quite possible, or you're trying to break it, but you will benefit more if you work for it, and you'll get a better grade as well. So like as I say, I'm just tomorrow, I'll be marking the first round of them. And I was very clear in class yesterday with the students saying, you can play it, you can try to break it if you wish, but, you know, bear the consequences. You'll get more out of it. You'll learn more. I expect you'll probably get a better grade too by actually simulating with it. You know, play the game, basically, is what I was saying. But not all students respond the same, and yes, they will try to break it, and that's the reality that we'll have to live with. Does that help, Lucas?
Yeah, totally. And I wonder from Cathy's perspective, then, is there like a demo one somewhere they can access where if they really just want to poke at it and aren't trying to, you know, hurt themselves academically, but they're just really curious to see how well developed these things are? There are opportunities for that out there. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I want to respond to J.R. Dingwell. Thank you for that question. And Cathy, then I'll leave you to respond to Thomas and others that are coming in now. It takes a lot to develop these modules. Usually I worked over the summer from perhaps April through to August and we start with a storyboard. You know, what are the learning objectives that we want to accomplish? How will we accomplish those? What's the dialogue or the sequence of interactions? Who are the characters? So I work very, very closely as the educational instructor with Cathy's simulation experts, and we combine to create, and then we test the heck out of it. And it's usually ready. It is always ready for, say, October. But Cathy, I think that describes how we do it.
Yeah, it's very collaborative.
Yeah. So JR, I hope that answers. And there is, we create sample documents, sample dialogues, what a good answer might look like, what we're really looking for when the students are responding. There is no perfect answer, but it's how the students navigate the path to get to the end of the dialogue. Cathy, over to you to answer a few questions there.
Yeah, let me go back here and see here. So there was one question from Thomas about other types of educational content besides language and communication. So it's interesting because the AI background is a natural language, but we're really able to look at this and support many different disciplines in our experience, but we've also been able to enhance our ability to assess coding. Actual physical coding. We built an assessment with the University of Waterloo that is used as a pre-assessment tool for all computer science engineers. And it assesses the student's ability to write code, Python code, in the context of sort of a Scrum or an Agile environment where they're dealing with a project and changing deadlines, changing scope, and all of that fun stuff of life. So we've done some neat things outside of pure language assessment, but I challenge give us what it is that you want to teach and let us tell you if we can do it, because it's kind of the roots of who we are. We like to take on any challenge and figure if there's a way to bring this to any kind of discipline. So I hope that answers your question, Thomas. I'm going down here. So Julie wants my contact information. I have trouble walking and chewing gum, so I'll throw that in the chat before the end. So I'm just reading Jordan's message here now. It's a little bit longer. The machine learning algorithm might adapt its communication over time to eventually fall outside of the learning objectives. I'm thinking because the microstructure. Okay, so when Ron talks about the experience morphing and changing based on learner work, it's not an automatic process. So we're auditing and doing a manual retraining of the AI based on learners' work. So we're able to gate how it actually is getting smarter on our end of things. So that's a process. I mean, every implementation we review with the instructor and the instructors. We ask what worked, what didn't work. Were the instructions clear? Can we make it better? Did we achieve the objectives that we set out to do? Is it too easy? Could we make it harder? So there's a whole process of review. And then every time it runs, we sample the learners and update the algorithms and then the responses based on that work. So the retraining is a manual retraining. So I don't think we're as concerned about that happening, but I will check out your link. French, I so want to do French. We were talking about that with eCampus. So we've actually scoped it, and we have a sort of a core series of modules that are really focused on essential skills and ready to run, and we're ready to do French. I just need someone to say to me, we want your modules in French. So Don was very helpful in helping us understand resources that are available to us to do it. So we are very happy to move forward and make these bilingual offers. So thank you for your question, Danielle. And I think you answered the question about how long did it take you to develop, Ron? Yeah. I mean, start to end, you know, we could do it in tighter time frames. We weren't working at it full time for the time that Ron talked about, but you know, so more condensed. We know what we're going to build, and it gets better, right? Every time we do the next one, it's faster. We know what we're doing, and it gets better. So it can be as short as 6-8 weeks. You know, sometimes it's that period extended over. I don't know, like an eye chart for Python.
So Sandra has asked about feedback, and Sandra Gabriel. Yes, the students get feedback, but it's not in a demo mode. They get feedback as they're going through the simulation, how well they're doing. And in, I think, all of our cases, Cathy, we have a mentor, so they can actually ask questions of their sort of guide without fear of failing.
Yeah, if that's it. I mean, the platform's designed to provide multi-layered real-time assessment and feedback. So in whatever interaction they're having, could be with their mentor character, who's, you know, maybe introducing them to a concept before they actually apply it, or an interaction with, you know, the technical CIO or the difficult hospital administrator. So the way it works is they, you know, enter what they enter in to talk to that character. And it's an immediate response back from the character. So that's the first level of feedback, because it's authentic. And in the simplest of terms, good stuff in, good stuff out, not so good stuff in, not so good stuff out. So if, you know, you should have demonstrated empathy and you didn't, that interaction, that character is going to get visibly more upset with you. If your intention was to, you know, get information, but you needed to get them on side by providing context and timelines to them, and you don't, they're going to tell you, yeah, I'll get that to you in 2 weeks. So you get what you put into it. But right below that interaction, and that's sort of like the almost sometimes the emotional response that learners have, like, oh my goodness, I didn't expect that. They hit a feedback button, and that feedback button displays the competency assessment. Well, I think we're lost. Is it gone?
No, we're good. We're
okay,
good.
sorry. My screen just changed. Anyways, so then they push that and they can see where they actually, you know, how well they did. Are they developing in the skill? Is it a mastery level? And then there's appropriate feedback of what they could have done differently in that interaction. And we've introduced a new feature, and I don't know if you're running it with your courses this term, but they actually have the ability then to try it again. So they can then, you know, basically take that feedback, hit the try again button, and retry that whole interaction and take a different strategy, a different tact, maybe use empathetic language if that's what's called for, and then see how the character responds and see their competency assessment again. So, and then the instructor, Ron's talked about them, they play a critical role in this, and it's constructed in a way so they can be as hands-on with the learner or as hands-off as they like, but they have the ability to actually see the learner's work at an interaction level and can provide a third level of more formative assessment and feedback on an interaction. They have the ability to say, that wasn't good enough. I'm resetting your interaction and you have to do it again, because that, you know, maybe you were trying to game it, maybe you weren't really putting your best foot forward, maybe you didn't understand, you know, what was asked of you in that. But there's a lot of opportunity for assessment and feedback.
And Cathy, you can't see me, but I have to say something. I get some students that say, you know, Professor, the machine told me that I wasn't empathetic, but I was empathetic, and they believe they're doing everything that is correct, and, you know, the simulation is being harsh. And I look at it and I say, well, you may want to rethink your assessment of yourself, because it may not be what it needs to be, and that's true in business life outside of the university. Go ahead, Cathy. There's one more question, or maybe we're finished.
Yeah, and I did want to say one other thing to everybody. Does the platform provide any immediate feedback? Do they get a chance to learn? Yeah, they can actually. Well, it depends where the grading is. I probably have to take that one offline with you, Sandra. Okay, maybe I'm missing stuff here. Okay, sorry, I'm down at the bottom now. And unfamiliar putting the students in practice mode. Oh, yeah, well, that's a great segue. So thank you for the try again button. Speaking of trialing this product, one of the things I wanted to share with everybody, and I think our friends at eCampus will send out a note as well, is we're happy to offer a zero cost limited trial for any of our off-the-shelf experiential learning modules. We've got about 24 of them now. And I'll put a link in the chat here. And if you're interested, you can register your interest in doing that. And we're happy to meet, figure out what it is you teach, what we have that might work with you, and set up a trial either in the winter or next fall in any of your programs to test drive this. So
we'll definitely be following up with the registrants of today with that information and other information coming out of today. So yes, I think we've come to the end of our 1 hour time together. Lots of great questions. I don't think we got to necessarily all of them, but we certainly did our best. So I wanted to thank Ron, Cathy, thank you very much for sharing information on this project. Absolutely fascinating. And I think lots of folks had lots of great questions. Thank you to, of course, our audience for attending here today and hearing a little bit about this. And we'll follow up with everyone on more information and engage with you around eCampus's work in adaptive learning, as well as Ametros and TMU. I also want to send out a big shout out to our comms team here at eCampus for making this webinar possible today. Lots of behind the scene work that goes into this. So thank you very much for that. If you'd like to find out more about our work in adaptive learning or to connect on work you might be doing in adaptive learning, please visit our webpage. Today's webinar is the first of a series of 3 being offered in October and November. You can join us on October 19th when we will hear from Conestoga College, Fanshawe College, and Ametros Learning again on their work together. You can register for that webinar through our website for this great learning opportunity, and we'll share the adaptive learning website in the chat there again. And just finally, in closing, I'd like to encourage everyone to explore the eCampusOntario website for our various programs and services, including the Ontario Extend program, micro-credentials, CAPFO, the Open Library, Ontario Exchange, and more. Of special note are 2 great opportunities to get involved. One I mentioned at the beginning of today's presentation, the Indigenous Knowledge Review of the Ontario Extend program. Please contact Alyssa Bigelow at the email provided or for more information, and Lutfia will share a couple of links there in the chat again. And the second is a peer review opportunity for the Open Library. Participants can contribute to the continuous improvement of OER as a subject matter expert by providing constructive feedback on the resources in the Open Library. For more information, please check out the Integrating OER program at the link that Lutfia is posting in the chat. Both of these opportunities provide some compensation, but more importantly, involve Ontario educators in the inclusive creation and improvement of resources for our sector. More details on all of these services, these great opportunities, and access to the recording from today's presentation will be sent out by email to all registrants. So thank you again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of your days.